Welcome to another day of reading of the book Surcharged with Divine Love, written by Sukmani Auntie and published by Unistar Books Private Limited. Chapter 19. Guruji protects my family even now. I remember my mother telling Guruji that we feel scared at times staying alone, especially after my grandfather's death. ਡਰਨ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ। ਮੈਂ ਦੋ ਬੰਦੇ ਸੁਖੀ ਤੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ, ਦੋ ਬੰਦੇ ਤੇਰੀ ਬੇਟੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੇ ਦੋ ਬੰਦੇ ਤੇਰੇ ਭਾਈ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਰੱਖੇ ਹਨ। There is no need to fear. I have assigned 2 men for your protection, Sukhi, 2 each for your daughters and 2 for your brother. My mother's brother is not a follower of Guruji but does a lot of prayers. I didn't quite understand the depth of what he had said at that moment. In 2012, I was having quite a few minor accidents in and around the house, and I mentally just asked Guruji, Guruji, what are those 2 men that you assigned to me doing? They're just sitting idle. Can't they see I'm about to fall or slip and prevent the fall? Obviously, I was just joking with Guruji and never thought much about it. That very evening, my mother asked me to take her shopping for ration, and after having made the purchases, as I walked back to the car, I heard screaming and screeching sounds. As I looked to my right, a scooterist seemed to have gone completely out of control and was about to crash into me. Just short of hitting me, the scooterist seemed to have turned the handle of the scooter and stopped barely 2 inches away from my foot. Of course, I was a bit taken aback as I had not seen him before crossing the road, but the scooterist seemed to be in a worse state than me. He kept mumbling, I didn't do it. Someone switched the ignition off and turned the handle away from her. He was visibly under shock. People gathered around and made him sit on the side and tried to calm him down. After some time, he told me, Ma'am, I saw you but panicked and froze. I didn't know what to do, so I screamed, hoping you would hear me, but there was no time. I would have crashed into you had it not been for some unknown force that switched my ignition off and turned my handle away from you. He kept pointing to the scooter and said, See, the ignition is off. I didn't do it. I felt someone do it for me and move the handle away from you. I understood that because I had questioned Guruji's protection, even though in a joke he had just shown me proof. I quickly apologized to him for causing him so much distress and ran towards my parked car. I sat inside and thanked Guruji for saving me that day. In another incident, my mother and I were returning home late from a function, and as I entered my lane, I heard ferocious barking of a dog in the park opposite my flat. Since it was pretty late, I found it very unlikely that someone would be walking his or her dog at such an hour. I presumed it was a stray. As I parked my car in the garage and walked towards my entrance, I heard the barking coming closer as if the dog was coming towards us. I made my mother quickly run up the stairs and turned back to see if I could stop the dog in some way. I was too late. I saw the dog jump over the fence of the park towards me and I just froze in fear. I was sure it was going to bite me. While the dog was still in the air, well, try imagining it in slow motion. I saw the dog bang against some kind of an invisible wall and just fall down flat on all his fours. The dog now lay a few feet away from me, looking completely dazed. He got up, whining, and just walked away in the opposite direction. The invisible wall or barrier was Guruji's protection for me that day. My nephew and niece too have felt Guruji's protection on multiple occasions. My nephew Rajdeep was once driving down from Chandigarh to Ludhiana after a tiring day at work. Midway, he felt so sleepy that he felt he wouldn't be able to go any further. He prayed to Guruji to help him get safely back home, and within a few seconds, he saw Guruji's face on the car's windscreen. He felt a strong current run down his body, and after that he was fully charged, up and awake, and made it safely back home. Rajdeep had an early morning flight from Chandigarh, and I was driving him to the airport. Just close to the airport, where the barricading starts, I noticed a security guard frantically waving his hands and shouting as if to warn us of something. I slowed down and tried to catch what he was trying to say. This somehow made him panic and run towards my car. I could see nothing in the rearview mirror or around me for such a reaction from him. Since it was still a bit dark, I decided not to stop and increased my speed to get into the airport as soon as possible. Just then, I heard a loud noise from behind. As we looked back, we saw a huge, angry wild bull ram into the car behind mine. Apparently, the guard was trying to warn us about this and it missed my car by a matter of a few seconds. The car that got hit was flung halfway across the road, and I'm sure the occupants must have been hurt. Rajdeep's first reaction was, Masi, it could have been us. Guruji has saved us. My niece Pearl was to join the University of Loughborough, England. My sister and brother in law had gone to leave her a couple of days before her induction. All her woolens and a dress for the freshers' party were brought from London and packed in a separate suitcase. On reaching the university, they suddenly realized that particular suitcase was missing. They called back the cab driver who confirmed no suitcase was left behind in the car. The security was contacted, but they didn't seem hopeful as the suitcase did not have Pearl's name on it. There were 10,000 children coming in that day, and it seemed next to impossible to find a small black suitcase without a name tag. Pearl was obviously upset. My sister took Pearl up to her room, thinking she would quickly set it up before rushing out to buy everything all over again. They kept the door of the room open for ventilation and got busy putting everything in place. They both prayed to Guruji to help them, and as they prayed, the door of the room suddenly closed. Pearl immediately got up to open it, and to their amazement, Pearl's black suitcase was lying there. Pearl quickly went out to see who had kept it there and saw that the hallway was completely empty. It was a long hallway, and even if someone ran at full speed, he or she would still be visible. Within a matter of a few seconds, how could someone just keep the suitcase at the door and run away? More importantly, who knew it was Pearl's room and how did they know her room number? The security, when told about the suitcase being located, were equally amazed at how it suddenly just materialized in front of the room. Guruji's ways are amazing. Just before COVID hit us all in 2020, I had suffered an injury to my foot due to which I was unable to drive. We were out of ration, and since I couldn't drive, I told my mother to wait for my sister to come take her shopping. Just then, the lockdown was announced, and I realized we didn't have enough ration to see us through the lockdown period. Whoever I called said they were unable to deliver as there was a lot of panic buying and shops were holding on to stocks. As a last resort, I rang up a shopkeeper I knew who owned a shop selling laces. Since his shop was next to a ration shop, I thought I'd ask him if it was open and delivering at home. To my dismay, he said it was shut down. He asked me what I wanted, and I told him I was out of ration and couldn't go to the market due to my injury and inability to drive. He asked me to WhatsApp him a list of all I needed and that he would personally deliver it to my house. Not only did he personally risk coming during lockdown, he brought a lot of extra things that were not on the list. On his own, he added a few vegetables and fruits, bread, cheese, and milk. What prompted him to do so? I didn't know him that well. Guruji made him a medium to provide for me and my mother. Guruji always looks after his disciples. Only a true guru is empowered by God to establish with disciples a divine relationship by which he leads those in his care out of the common sheepfold of delusion to freedom in the Elysian pastures of God's consciousness. Paramhansa Yogananda. Chapter 20. Guruji shows us a movie. Having studied in Delhi, our second language was Sanskrit. My sister and I didn't understand a word of Punjabi. My mother did her schooling from Sanawar school and she had never studied Punjabi either. My dad was fluent in English, Hindi, and Punjabi, but because we never understood a word of it, so Punjabi was never spoken at home. Guruji spoke fluent Punjabi, and many times we had blank expressions on our faces and had to look towards the Sangat with the hope that someone would translate what he was saying. In the beginning, when we met Guruji, it was very difficult for us to understand what he said. We could barely catch a word or two and try and make sense of it. Guruji would often make fun of us by telling the Sangat, "Eh tin अंग्रेजना ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਸਮਝਾਓ ਮੈਂ ਕੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਹੈ." Someone please tell these three foreigners what I have just said, and then someone from the Sangat would explain everything to us. One day, after all the Sangat had left, Guruji suddenly announced, "Chalo मैं ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ picture ਦਿਖਾਵਾਂ. Let me show you a movie." We were obviously super excited to watch a movie with Guruji, and soon a TV and VCR were brought from someone's house and the movie started. It turned out to be a Punjabi movie. We were still struggling to make sense of it, and Guruji suddenly got hold of the remote control. He would fast forward and rewind and then fast forward some more. We realized much later that he only played the parts played by a particular artist who was a follower of Guruji. We were later told that he was blessing her. Once the movie finished, he asked us, "Kiਵੇਂ ਲੱਗੀ picture? How did you like the movie?" The entire movie went over our heads, but we couldn't tell him that and meekly replied that it was nice. My sister suddenly asked Guruji, "Will I ever see God?" "Kamliye, tere naal ta baitha haan. I'm sitting with you." That day, he told us, "ਮੇਰੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਨੀ power ਹੈ, ਮੈਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਵੀ ਬੈਠੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਨੂੰ bless ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਹਾਂ. I have so much power, I can sit here and bless anyone anywhere in the world. ਅਸਲੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਮੰਗੋ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲੋਂ, ਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਕੋਲ ਭੰਡਾਰ ਹੈ, ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ bless ਕਰਨ ਆਇਆ ਹਾਂ. Ask for me for the real blessings. I have come here to bless everyone." My mother immediately replied and said she wanted the real blessings. "Guruji, मुझे असली चीज़ चाहिए." असली चीज़ हौली हौली मिलती है, जे गरम चाह एकदम पी लो तो ज़बान सड़ती है. असली चीज़ भी टाइम दे नाल ही मिलती है. Real blessings take time. It's best given little at a time, because just as drinking hot tea can burn your mouth, similarly, if I give it all at once, you will get burnt and won't be able to handle it. ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੋ, ਇੱਕ ਦਿਨ ਲਾਈਨ ਲੱਗੇਗੀ ਗੇਟ ਤੱਕ. ਇੰਨਾ ਰਸ਼ ਹੋ ਜਾਏਗਾ ਕਿ ਮੇਰੀ ਪਰਛਾਈ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਮੱਥਾ ਟੇਕ ਲਓਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਕਲਿਆਣ ਹੋ ਜਾਊਗਾ. ਫਿਰ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਨ ਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਚੰਦ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਆਣਗੇ. There will be a time you will not be able to sit with me the way you all are sitting today. There will be such a large number of Sangat that the queues will be endless and way beyond the mandir gates. In those days, even if you bow down to my shadow, you will be blessed. Eventually, a day will come when you will see me in the moon. The Guru is the ladder, the dinghy, the raft by means of which one reaches God. The Guru is the lake, the ocean, the boat, the sacred place of pilgrimage, the river. Without the Guru, there can be no bhakti, no love. Guru Nanak. Chapter 21. Strange Appearance of Rats. My mother once had a telepathy that Guruji had thrown a gutka, prayer book, wrapped in a cloth towards her. This actually happened exactly the same way when we were sitting in Empire Estate and Guruji walked down the stairs and threw a gutka wrapped in a saropa, holy cloth, in her lap and said, "Sukhi auntie, le paat kar." Sukhi auntie, do prayers. Mom was a bit confused as just a few years ago, Guruji had told her to pack up all her prayer books and not to pray. तू पाठ नहीं करना, गुटके बंद कर दे ते कवालियाँ सुन, रब नाल इश्क. Pack up your prayer books, you're not to pray. From now on, just listen to qawwalis, Sufi songs that talk about love with God. Just as she was contemplating what to do, Guruji called us all inside his room. Guruji, मैंने फिर से पाठ करना है, asked Mom. Am I to start praying with the prayer book again? नहीं, तू पाठ नहीं करना है, सुखमनी ने पाठ करना है. सारे गुटके नू पढ़ के फिर गुरुद्वारे विच दान दे आना है. No, not you. Sukhmani has to read it, and once completed, it has to be left at a gurdwara, a place of worship for the Sikh community. So my mother passed on the gutka to me, and when I opened it, it was in Punjabi. Since I couldn't read Punjabi, I closed it thinking I'll see when I learn the language, then I'll read it. Guruji read my thoughts and immediately said, नहीं, घर वापस जाके पढ़ना है. No, go back home and read it. Now I wasn't too pleased with the orders as it meant I will have to learn a new language first. I reached Chandigarh and asked my grandfather to write down on a piece of paper the alphabets of the Punjabi language alongside their corresponding Hindi alphabet. I did a day's hard work trying to recognize the alphabets and finally sat down to read the gutka at 2 a.m. in the morning. I covered my head with the saropa in which the gutka was wrapped. As I started, I realized I was able to read it perfectly well. The more I read, the more Guruji's fragrance filled up in my saropa, and eventually the entire room I was sitting in became fragrant. Not only that, I noticed small rats surround the chair I was sitting on. As the prayers went on, I saw more rats in the room. The strange thing was that they were just moving around me in the room I was in and didn't cross over or go to the adjoining rooms. With my feet up on a table and with one eye on the pot and the other on the rats, I finally managed to finish my prayers. The moment the prayer book ended, I noticed that the rats and the fragrance also disappeared. Next morning, I had all the servants look for the rats. From what I saw the night before, it seemed the house was infested with rats, but in the morning we couldn't find any trace of a rat in the house. The whole phenomenon was so strange and no one had a logical explanation. I waited to ask Guruji about it. Meanwhile, I went to the Gurdwara the next morning and left the gutka there as ordered by Guruji. Now, what was even more strange is the fact that I have had prayer books in Hindi all my life, but the moment I would sit down to pray from them, I wouldn't feel nice. I tried my grandfather's prayer books, which were in Punjabi, and I found that I enjoyed them. Soon, all my gutkas, prayer books, were changed from Hindi to Punjabi. My style of doing part changed. Where I was just reading out of the Hindi gutkas, now I was singing and doing my prayers. I have never seen anyone do prayers in that particular manner, nor did anyone teach me. This greatly surprised my mother and grandfather, who used to hear me do my prayers. Not only this, seemed to be able to read only the prayer books in Punjabi. Any other book in Punjabi was and still is extremely difficult for me to read. It seems that Guruji had brought forward something from my past. It is impossible to learn a new language in such a short span of time with practically no help. On my next visit to Guruji, I decided to ask him about all that had happened. Sure enough, within a few days, Guruji called us to Delhi. He asked me if I had read the prayer book, and having told him that I did, I took the opportunity to probe. I told him all about the rats and the fragrance, but all Guruji ever said was, Kalyan ho gaya. No amount of probing got me any answers, and I finally gave up. Like I mentioned before, it seemed like something from my past life was brought into this one with Guruji's grace. Till today, I do my prayers from Punjabi Gutkas and I enjoy it thoroughly. Chapter 22. Guruji's sudden arrival at 7 a.m. There was a wedding in Chandigarh and Guruji was to come from Delhi to grace the occasion. Now the family was one who had always mocked me on multiple occasions. I was very upset with Guruji for attending their function. A few days before the function, there was news that he wasn't attending it, and sometimes you would get the news that he is coming. Till the last moment, we were not sure of Guruji's plans. On the day of the wedding, 30th of January to be precise, Guruji suddenly called up early in the morning. सुखी मैं ट्रिब्यून चौक ते खड़ा हाँ सुखमनी ਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਅੱਗੇ ਗੱਡੀ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਏ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਘਰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਵੇ Sukhi, I am standing at the Tribune office, close to the entry point of Chandigarh. Tell Sukhmani to come in a car and take us home. Now I was already upset with Guruji's decision, and on top of everything, I have never been a morning person. So when I was woken up at 6:30 a.m. with the instructions to go get Guruji home, I was grumpy. Has he forgotten where we live? I asked Mom, wondering why he wants me to escort him home when he's been to our house so many times before. Of course, I was given a dirty look and shoved out in the cold to go get Guruji. Guruji was in a car with some disciples from Delhi and I escorted them all back home. As soon as Guruji entered our room, all the pictures on the walls, mostly of Guruji and Shivji, started to show eyes and lip movement. He quickly lay down on my bed and Mom gave him a blanket so he could rest. Those who accompanied him from Delhi were resting in another room and I got busy making arrangements for their bath and breakfast. Guruji sent word through my mother that he wanted to see me. As I entered the room, he called me towards him and very lovingly asked me, "तू मेरे नाल नाराज़ है ना कि मैं इस विआह ते क्यों आया हाँ? मैं सब जानदा हाँ, मैं उन्हां वास्ते नहीं आया हाँ, मेरे आन दा कारण कुछ और है. You're angry with me because I decided to come to this wedding. I know everything and what all has been said to you. My reason to come today is something else." And he told me why he had finally decided to come. I apologized to Guruji and fell at his feet. I was then instructed to prepare the bathroom for his bath. We always kept new slippers and towels for him, and I soon mixed the water at an appropriate temperature for his bath. While I was doing so, Guruji noticed a few weight loss tablets and shakes on my table and asked Mom, "ये सब की है? What is all this?" "Guruji, ये सब weight कम करने के लिए है," replied Mom. "अच्छा, इस दे नाल weight कम हुंदा है? कौन खाता है? मैनू भी खिला." "Really? You can lose weight like this? Who is eating all this? Give them to me. I would like to eat them too." My mother then told Guruji that Sukhmani is trying to lose weight. Guruji was then given the tablets and shake to drink. After having them, he went in for a bath. I cannot explain the way he sang and did part while having his bath. The tune and the voice was so mesmerizing that I just sat under his bathroom window to listen and felt as if one was going into a trance. When he came out, he again called out for me. I ran back into the room and he threw the tracksuit that he wore while traveling into my lap and said, "आ ले, इसनो पाके सैर किया कर, पतली हो जाएंगी. Here, wear this and go for walks. You'll lose weight." I was so delighted at having received such a precious gift from him that I was literally jumping with joy and my life was made. Guruji went out to sit in the backyard and asked me to get him some breakfast. Guruji had paranthas with white butter, chutney and buttermilk for breakfast, and while eating he suddenly turned towards my mother and said to her, "Sukhi, तेरे मन विच डाउट है ना कि शिवजी दे हत्थ विच त्रिशूल क्यों हुंदा है? शिवजी नूं वैपन दी की लोड़ है?" "Sukhi, you have this doubt in your mind about Shivji holding the trident in his hand, and that if he is so powerful, why does he need to hold a weapon?" "Yes, Guruji, I've been thinking about it," replied Mom. "त्रिशूल weapon नहीं है, ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਵਿਸ਼ਨੂੰ ਬ੍ਰਹਮਾ ਤੇ ਮਹੇਸ਼ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਤੀਕ ਹੈ. ਅਸੀਂ ਮਹਾਸ਼ਿਵ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਹੱਥ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ." The trident is not a weapon, it's a symbol of Lords Vishnu, Brahma, and Mahesh, which Mahashiv keeps in his hands. I quickly intervened and asked Guruji about the difference between Shiv and Mahashiv. I asked him as to why he sometimes referred to them as two different entities. Is Shiv and Mahashiv different? Guruji then asked me if the earth was the only planet where life existed, and I said, Guruji, I don't know, but science says so. He then explained that there are many Earth like planets where life is existing. Some are more spiritually advanced than us, and some more backward, where less spiritually evolved souls exist. Each planet has one Brahma, one Vishnu, and one Shiv who look after the planet. Therefore, there are many Brahmas and Shivs and Vishnus. The supreme power that keeps all of these Brahmas, Vishnus, and Shivs in his hand is just one, and that one power is Mahashiv. That day, Guruji told us, Sukhmani, Asi Mahashiv. I am Mahashiv. After his breakfast, Guruji left for the wedding and told us to get ready and reach the venue soon. After the wedding, he instructed a lot of Sangat from Delhi to visit our house. सुखी दे घर जाके देख के आओ मैं की नज़ारे दिखाए हन. Go to Sukhi's house and see what all is happening there. Whoever came home that day noticed the photographs moving, and the fragrance in the house was just amazing. The bathroom where he took a bath remained fragrant for almost 3 weeks. After having returned to Delhi, Guruji called up home and instructed us to come to Delhi the following day. We were always told to start from Chandigarh at 6 am and reach him by 11 am. Strict instructions were given to me not to stop on the way to pick up a burger from McDonald's. गड्डी रोकनी नहीं है, सीधे मेरे पास आना है. सुखमनी, तू बर्गर ना खाया कर. Since he had given instructions not to stop the car, I decided to go through the drive-through of McDonald's and pick up my burger without stopping the car. That way I was being over smart about fulfilling his wishes and getting my burger too. As soon as we reached Guruji at Empire Estate, Guruji called us inside his room. He then told us, जो सब तू वेट लॉस के लिए खा रही है ना, वो हेल्थ के लिए बहुत ख़राब है. उस दिन ना किडनीज फेल हो जानी थी. मैं ਉਹ सब खा के उस दिन सारा असर अपने उत्ते ले लिता सी. ਹੁਣ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਉਹ सब कचरे ਵਿੱਚ ਸਿੱਟ ਦੇ. Whatever you were eating for your weight loss was very harmful and it would have ruined your kidneys. I ate everything that day and took all of its ill effects onto myself. When you go home, throw everything in the dustbin. ਵਜ਼ਨ ਕਮ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਨੈਚੁਰਲ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਖਾਇਆ ਕਰੋ ਤੇ ਸੈਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਰੋ. ਇਹ ਸਭ ਅਨਨੈਚੁਰਲ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਸਿਹਤ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਹਨ. To lose weight, you must only rely on natural things and walk. Walking is the best way to lose weight. All these unnatural shakes and medicines will ruin your health. Sukhmani, tu raste vich kinne burger khade ha? Sukhmani, how many burgers did you eat on the way? I would then sheepishly tell him I had eaten just one, and he would then tell me not to eat them as they weren't good for me. Many years later, after Guruji's Mahasamadhi, I understood why he was stopping me from eating fast food. I fell ill, and the reason for the illness was diagnosed to be too much junk food and coke. जय गुरुजी. आज की रीडिंग बस यहीं तक. कल फिर अगले चैप्टर से शुरू करेंगे. उम्मीद करती हूँ आप सबको बहुत अच्छा लगा. सुखमनी आंटी का भी फिर से शुक्राना अपनी इतने ब्यूटीफुल एक्सपीरियंसेस को हमारे साथ शेयर करने के लिए. जय गुरुजी.